Hello and welcome to our first Leadership Live session. Joining us today is Jessie van der Zanden. Welcome, Jessie. Thanks for joining us. I know that you're currently working with Queensland Rail as a workplace health and safety advisor, and you're actually one of our alumni. So you act as an alumni mentor for our current students, and you graduated back in 2010.
Yes, thanks, Tanya. So I originally got into safety. So my background is safety. Back when I finished my travels, so I took the gap year off that most people sort of think about and don't do. I actually did that. And then when I got back, I had an incident at work, and that's when I got into safety. So I then went on to study at university. So for me, being an external student, all my course was actually online, and I was required to come up to Rockhampton once a semester and then do a 2-week stint at the very end of that course. So that was where we had a big res school. And then from there, I got into the Department of Education, working and helping them roll out an OHS management system, which is quite a big task. So it was split down to regions. After that, I then worked with Newcrest Mining in their graduate program before the recession hit, which kind of took a big tumble. And then from there, started working with Queensland Rail, where I've worked with the various groups, and also did a bit of an acting stint as a senior rail safety advisor. So from all of that, you kind of get a bit of a mishmash of different things. My student life was a bit different, I think, to some people who get to go to uni every day. For me, it was literally get up, be disciplined in what I had to do. I had to do it full time, so I was literally doing all 4 subjects a semester, and I would break it down into what I was going to do what day. I literally started, my assignments within a couple of weeks of them being released. So, you'd see people quickly, frantically typing them out the last few days, and I'm like, oh no, I finished that one, I'm on to this one. So it was a bit different in that sense for people and for me to do all that. And then the last year was a little bit harder for me, because I actually had a big operation in that year. So not only was I studying full time, I was recovering from an operation and then still trying to manage and juggle everything all in one hit. So that became a bit different for me. And then after uni, of course, started with the Victorian Department of Education, which was really interesting, because you wouldn't think of an education department needing a structural and safety team, which they did actually have. There was about 5 of us, and we each looked after a region, and they had to implement an OHS management system into all the schools, which was through the Department of Ed, but each principal was allocated as a managerial role, which is very different to what we know up here in Queensland. And then after that, I got a role in Newcrest Mining, which they're a gold mining company. They are Australian, with joint ventures in Papua New Guinea, the Ivory Coast, and Australia. They have their own gold mines, with a couple of joint gold mines as well. In that, I was predominantly based in the office, but I learned a lot about how the mines work, how they operate. I got to go to a couple of site visits and learn about what they do. Australia has open cut and underground mines. So the mine down in Orange in Cadia Valley, it's actually one of the biggest underground gold mines in Australia. So I got to go down there and learn about that side of things. And then when the recession hit, I lost my job, of course. So came back to Queensland, and then eventually ended up working for Queensland Rail. And in this space, I've worked with a few different client areas per se. So first one was looking after train crew and working out how they operate and what they needed help in as well. And then after that, it was maintenance. So that's where the background mining of everything came into play as well. So both mining and the maintenance of rail make them both high risk due to the fact and the nature of what they do. So in the maintenance space, the guys literally look after all the trains. They have high voltage, low voltage, plant equipment. Some of their biggest risks are train movement. And so that was looking after them. And I actually now look after a different team in that space. And one of their biggest risks is high voltage, as well as train movement. So it's really hard to think of that mining and rail are high risk industries because it's not really stated in legislation, because rail have their own legislation and so does mining. However, they interlink it with WHS. So it's very interesting dynamic to look at. And I also acted in a role for a senior rail safety advisor. So it's a little bit different from a senior safety advisor in the fact that you predominantly look after rail side of things, but also you take into account of what happens. So you need to understand signals, distancing, if something happens or something occurs on the train, go and have a look at it, find out what happened, and then look after them and see where things can be fixed or repaired. So for an example, one of my colleagues had started a task of getting a stopping signal, or what we call a driver marker, moved, and it's nearly taken about 2 years, I think, to get this particular point moved up at one of the North Coast stations. So in government, things don't move very fast, so it does kind of take a while for anything to happen. And then just recently I've come back down, my acting position finished, so I've come back down into the safety space, which has been really awesome to get back down into there and to help the guys that I now look after. So I know one of the questions is about leadership. I think for me personally, when I was at uni, it was about being disciplined. So being disciplined in what I would do, how I would set things up with my time, and allocating time and things and sticking to that. It was really hard to say to people, I can't go somewhere, I've got to do this assignment. And they're like, oh, you got to have a break. I'm like, yeah, just in a couple of hours. So I sort of tried to be disciplined in what I was doing to make sure I got everything done on time, and made sure everything was correct, but also researching things. So now being a mentor, it's a couple of people have asked me questions about things and what they can do, and I can honestly tell you, research what you want to do, what fields you want to look into, and also what is out there. So it doesn't matter what discipline you're in, it can lead to other disciplines as well. So for me personally, I know that I can work in many different fields. I might just have to learn to adapt my knowledge and information. And the same goes for lots of other areas. It could just be learning something else, and being keen on learning. So it has come a long way for me. I think I've worked out a few months ago, I started this journey about 12 years ago now. So it's been quite a long journey, that's for sure. So lots of different things. And I think at the moment, COVID-19 has definitely shown a lot of big companies how people can work differently as well. So at the moment, I'm actually working from home and only come into the office when I need to. So being able to show my managers in a sense that I can do my work from home. I don't need to be in an office realm, that I can do work where I need to be, and I can easily do it, no problem. I just, again, the same things that I've applied throughout my uni life was that I'm disciplined, and, you know, as long as I've got things on the go that I need to do, sorry, I make sure that I keep all that going as well. So if something comes up, just action it straight away unless I can't, and use what research skills I have. So it's been quite a journey, I think, even during this time, to just sort of sit back and really work on things. So yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting ride, 2020. So we'll see what happens in the future.
Certainly has been. And I think, you know, listening to your story, it's the role that you've taken on, I think, is a really good example of how, although you may not have always been managing people, you are always in a leadership role due to that very nature of the work that you do. People are looking to you as the health and safety expert. How can we do this better or safer, and that sort of thing. How do you find that influences communication when you're working with people?
So I think a good example of that is the maintenance team. So a lot of people will probably think, oh, you know, they've got a lot of risks. And at the moment I've been having to say to people, look at their injuries that they've had or their incidences. What of it has related to their training? None of it. What has related because something was either introduced into the workplace and not explained, something was taken away from the workplace and people didn't know, or something in the workplace changed and it wasn't communicated correctly or explained properly. And being able, I've found, talking to people has given me a great success in that they will come to me now and talk to me, but they also see that I have similar frustrations as them, as to what they're feeling, depending on where and who it's coming from. So knowing that they've got similar frustrations to what I've got does help, but I've also learned to ask questions. Don't go into places like a bull at a gate. I'm an observer. I will sit there and watch people. I've also had people come up to me and say, I really like you, you don't tell us to stop doing jobs. And I'm like, well, I don't know your job, but you can tell me your job and I'll listen to that. Which has given me that great, I think, advantage in a predominantly, I will be honest, it is a male industry. So being there to listen and watch and not step in if not needed has won me, I think, some big brownie points with people, but also helping people when they need it. So I've got a different manager to what I normally have worked with, and we've had to find a bit of a ground and a workaround to each other. So what I mean by that is that personality wise, we are both at different ends of the spectrum, but I've been able to find a workaround with him and work with him in a different manner to what he's used to. And he's also found a way to work with me and talk with me and to see how things are going and what's happening. So I think it's finding that happy balance. So if you've ever worked with someone and then you either have to do something with them, try and find a way to look at things differently with them. And you might pick up on different cues from them of how you can adjust yourself, or they might even adjust their way of thinking as well, which I think has been super important for me working in a high risk industry and trying to get points across, because you have to remember these guys have a job to do. They get told one thing, but then we're telling them something else. So you've got to find that happy medium, most definitely.
And I know sometimes when you're coming into those sorts of roles, there can also be that sort of anticipatory resistance because they're expecting that you're going to come in and tell them to do things differently or tell them that they're wrong. And that's, as soon as you start doing that, obviously you've lost. So it's all about the way that you go about exploring it, like you were saying, and understanding their perspective to sort of build up to that new win-win situation.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, I've had lots of different supervisors who see safety as you're here to put the death knell on us, or you're here to make us do other things. Or I've tried to get across to managers going, share the love. You have lots of things that you can share around to people. It is also their role as well as yours. I know safety is becoming a little bit different in workplaces now, because Australia is very risk adverse. And by what I mean by that is we're a country that really looks at risk and safety, and then we will manage how we're going to do it. So more and more things come into play, whereas I will sort of look at things and go, right, what do you need? What do you need help with? And one of the things that for example, I'm trying to help with at the moment is trying to put engineering documents that are instructions or forms, for example, and coordinate the safety information to go into them. And the reason I want to do that is it saves me time writing something out that will get signed off once and not looked at again. But also, if something has to go up to the regulator, so does the engineering document. So if you've already got the safety information in there, bang, you've just hit two birds with one stone. So trying to work with different factions to go, hey, look, how can we do this, and what can we look at, and where can we put things at the moment is proving to be a little bit interesting. But also, in saying that, the other biggest thing that I've not necessarily struggled with, but I find people have struggled with, is culture. And I don't mean that from a country perspective. I mean from people understanding what safety is and moving with the times. So I've got several groups that I know of where they've got older people who are now starting to retire, and the younger people are coming up. Their mentality is completely different to what these older guys and that have had, and some of them are struggling. And it's really disappointing to see, because some of it's about just helping your mates, or maybe you could learn something and no one's sort of telling them that, or they're finding different management styles as well. So one manager will come and yell at them, another one will say, oh, could you please, and thank you very much. And it's taken a few of them back, but they're noticing that. So having those different wins with people can go a long way in everything, regardless of what field you're in.
If we come back a bit, you've worked in like education, mining, rail. I mean, they're very different. Rail and mining probably have more interrelated because they've got similar risks in some respects. But what strategies or approach do you use when you're starting a new role or a new industry, particularly so you can integrate and gain that specialised knowledge that you need so you can do your work well?
Yeah, so my number one tip is listen. You will generally, wherever you are, you will be paired up. So for example, when I worked for the Department of Education, I looked after the Gippsland region. So in that, my role was to talk to principals or deputy principals or health and safety reps, and honestly be their sounding board, take on, just be there to listen to them and listen to what's going on. And then you can find out what's happening and go back and look into researching it. So I did that. So I would listen to them, find out what's happening. So for example, a really nice gentleman in Melbourne, in Victoria, was selling a ladder license, which wasn't really a thing at all. And all these principals had gone out the department and said, oh yes, you have to have a ladder license. Yep, so you knew how to use a ladder. And then I was the lucky one from my region who got to tell them there was no such thing as a ladder license, and then had to explain to them that it was actually working at heights. So as soon as they went onto the roof, it became a whole different kettle of fish. And all these principals said, well, oh, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, that's okay. But they're like, oh, we've got to get kids' balls off the roof when they go up there at 3 o'clock. I said, no, you don't. I said, simple. Just tell parents you'll go up there once a quarter and you will retrieve everything. And then maybe the kids won't play near the buildings. And a few of them took that on board. And then depending on where I went was depending on how many students they had. So, you know, sometimes they did have to go and do things. And then when I got into the mining, it was a similar thing again about talking to people, because it's, you know, just getting to talk to the guys and everything. And the same in rail, just talking to them has probably won me more brownie points, and not going in there charging at them, telling them what to do, but just understanding and really talking to them. Or if you want something done, wording it in a nice manner will get you a lot further, I believe, than having that you must do this now attitude, instead of going, hey, look, would you mind putting in this into place by this date, and we'll have a look to see if it's working. But also, if you've got any questions or you need a hand, let me know. So yes, you've told them to do something, but you're being open and honest with them and saying, look, I will help you, which goes a long way than anything else, to be honest with you, than going in there going, you must do this now. Talking to them, offering assistance, you'll win brownie points, I think, a lot.
And it's not always that formal asking, is it either? Because like I know when I first started working water infrastructure, no idea how it worked. But I'd spend, you know, every time I went to the lunchroom to get a cup of tea or something, I'd have a chat to whoever was in there and started learning how the terminology, systems, how it all related. And it just gives you that, I guess, a more relaxed way of learning rather than a, you know, a formal, can you tell me about X, Y, Z? And people, you learn so much more.
Yeah, definitely. And also talking to people. So for me, at one stage, we had to do risk assessments on, for example, on changing a bogie, which is the thing that makes the train sort of, which sits on the track and the frame of the train sits on there. I didn't realise that they have to undertake a lot of stuff to get one of those out of a train. But what I also didn't know is on the regional fleet, we have what's called the power car, and that's where the drivers operate from. It's done differently to the rest of the carriages at the back. So I had to learn how things worked, and then understanding another component, which is called a cardan shaft. And our cars actually do have one. And so I actually went down to the guys in the supervisor's office and said, so I've tried to Google this about a cardan shaft, and they just laughed because I said all I could come up with was a car. And then the guys went on to tell me there's actually 4 in the particular train. I'm like, right, can I borrow someone, please? So I got a win by trying to look. My second win was by admitting that I couldn't find something. My third was getting them a laugh out of it. But then also when I sat down with the guys to ask them how something worked, they were forthcoming in the information about what I needed, because I was interested and I was listening. I wasn't telling them, oh, no, that's not right, that's wrong. I was listening to what they were telling me, and they appreciate that a lot more. Or if I had a question, don't hesitate to ask someone. Don't assume. Really, it's the worst thing you can do. Go and ask. It doesn't, as that adage is, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't know, you will win more points, I believe, by asking someone who does know and listening to them with the intent and the understanding of it, and clarifying with them, because it goes a long way, especially when you've got to work with these people down the track as well, or apply that knowledge in another industry if you head that way as well.
I think that's really key, because quite often we think the leader or someone who is in a leadership type role has to be the expert, but that's not the case. The good leader has the experts around them, and they know how to get the information from them when they need it.
Yes, so I can give you a good example of that at the moment. So I do have a manager. Background is not safety, but their background is risk. So their knowledge is in that side. They actually tagged a piece of equipment out that they didn't need to tag out. So I spent 2 days researching requirements for this particular piece of plant, only to come up with the knowledge of knowing that no, you don't need something. The engineer specs have said this, Australian standards have said this. The piece of legislation that you have is wrong. It actually defined a passenger, which in this particular piece of plant, we don't convey passengers in it. So what was required was not required. And then from that, then spoke to a training organisation and 2 certifiers who said, you can go and buy something, but we will not fit it for you, nor will we certify that piece of plant to be usable, because you're going to make it more dangerous and go against manufacturing standards. So at the moment, I'm waiting for something, which is the manufacturer's specifications, so that I can go back to that manager and go, here's everything you need to know. And, you know, use the people around you. If that manager had done that, I wouldn't have had to spend 2 days literally trying to solve the answers in a day, because now I have a manager without this piece of plant and they need it. So it's not helping at all.
Yeah. Now, earlier you shared a bit about the need for discipline when you're managing your study online.
Yep.
Can you share with us, like, the vision that you had for yourself and your career that helped to keep you on track? Because it wouldn't have been easy. I know what that's like, studying online.
At the time, like I didn't realise, but I'd actually was getting sick. So my medical condition slowly progressed. So it made it not super hard. The second half of the second year was half, and then so was the third year. But my goal was just to get my studies finished. But also, I was one of the first people in my immediate family to go to uni. So that was my goal. It's like, I can do this. I will be honest, I'm not the best writer and I'm not the best speller by any means. I'm a person who can type, but my brain thinks faster than what I'm typing. So I definitely use the services that CQ have, and I highly recommend them, by the way. And then I would always reward myself when I'd done something as well. So it wasn't by getting like good grades or anything. It was more about going, hey, guess what? You've done this. You've done this term. You've completed this. Or, you know, how's it all going? I will be honest, I actually failed 2 subjects. So instead of doing them again online, I found a way to do one of them at another university. And I know that might sound weird to people. Why would you want to go to another university? It was because I could then attend a lecture and see things better. So if there are subjects that you sort of struggle with and you know that there's a closer by university that you can physically attend, ask CQ about interchanging with them. Yes, you do have to pay to get your grades put back to CQU and acknowledged, but it really helped me to go to that university, attend the lectures in person, and then attend the classes, I forgot what they're called now, afterwards, where you have to, you know, in your groups, because I got to see models, and being that you could see things and handle them a lot differently made it so much easier for me. So it's acknowledging how you need to take in information as well. So it's really important that you do what's right for you. And even if it is setting yourself little goals of going, hey, you know what, I want that outfit or I want that device, that's your goal to achieve something. And I sort of made sure I would do that. Or if someone might say to me, you've done enough, which was generally my mum, she's like, come on, we'll go out. And I would feel guilty. And I really, when I look back on it now, I shouldn't have done, because I had achieved so much, you know, in a week or a day. And it's okay. It's okay to reward yourself and take time for you. And if you need to, do it. Or, you know, if you think, oh, I don't want to do those extra summer subjects because I want to go out and have fun in the sun, make that your goal, that you can go out and do other things. at a later time. So just set yourself up for success for you, not for anyone else. Do it for you.
That sounds really good. And self-care is one of those things that it's really easy to let slip and not pay attention to.
Yes, definitely.
So I guess the next step, when you're looking at, or when you started moving from your studies into your first role, what were some of the challenges and some of the wins that you experienced at the time?
The biggest challenge that I had was at the time was trying to find a graduate program or a graduate position that would suit me. So I did sign up for the job agencies, and I did apply to all the graduate programs that are out there. But what I learned from that as well, because what I had done previously is I'd taken a vocation program out to Emerald, and it actually taught me a lot more than what a graduate program does, because in that vacation program I actually learned that I'm not suited for regional or remote working. I personally cannot cope with it. I struggle with it. And that was something that I didn't know unless I had have gone and done that. And at the time I'd applied for all these graduate programs to BHP, Rio Tinto, and not really thought about it. And then, one day I went out to Olympic Dam and I was just like, oh my God, I cannot live out here. Even though they had a shop, a cinema, a pool, I panicked. I really, really did panic because it was so remote and everything. Whereas Rio Tinto, I went to Alcoa, which is in Tasmania. And from there, I thought, okay, no, I could do that. It was cold. I will admit it was very, very cold, but it was doable because you could go to other places from there compared to being in Olympic Dam where you couldn't. So really, really look at yourself, I think, and what you can do, what you can cope with. Don't worry about what anyone else says to you. Work out where you want to be. So I didn't realize that I was going to end up in high risk, but being in high risk means you can apply it to a lot of other areas, but it also can, I think some people might look at it and go, oh, no, it's too much, or the knowledge isn't there. But if you can show you're willing to learn, that is super important. But also research if you're going to somewhere, and have a look at where they're going to send you and what it's going to look like, because you just don't know either.
And quite often we have like a picture in our minds of what it's going to be like, and that may not necessarily be the realities.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely does happen that way. So have a look around. If you're a traveler, you'll always research where you're going to travel. It's the same with a job. Any new job I apply for, when I have applied for them, I actually research the company as well, or I'll jump on Seek and see what people give them as a score, but also why people have left as well and what people think of them. They do give you a bit of insight to what it's like, but you also have to look past some people who are disgruntled or annoyed, but also look at the other comments there that do talk, because sometimes people have different experiences. So you've got to work out what suits you as an individual, not that person who's just left.
Did you have any tips that you would like to share with us around that? I guess this, looking at your new job, what you need to do, well, even while we're at university, what are the things that we should be doing to prepare and to get ourselves in the best possible position?
I think if you can, so I didn't realise this, but when I left Newcrest, my resume at the time was a graduate resume. So I highly recommend either getting someone to write, a professional to write your resume, or if you know of someone who's got a pretty good resume, borrow theirs. from that side of thing, if you've been working before in an industry and you know about it, get someone to help you to write your resume and your cover letter. If you are a brand new graduate, ask someone. I originally Googled my first resume for being a graduate, and yeah, okay, you look at them and you think they're not glorious, but when I left Newcrest, I forgot to update. I didn't update it for a couple of months, and then we were given the opportunity to go through a resume writer and a career guide, like guidance person. So he actually helped me rewrite my resume, which then helped me gain better jobs and understanding. So, and then just recently I had my resume updated again and my cover letter for those reasons. So it's really important. It might be a piece of paper. It might seem like nothing to you, but it's a lot to ever who your future employer is going to be. And it's okay to spend a little bit of money on yourself, like that style of thing, to get your resume and everything up to date. It doesn't need to be War and Peace. The job market definitely does not want War and Peace. They definitely have a set out of how they would like your resume and cover letters to be done. So I think that's my biggest tip, is make sure that where you can, either get a really good template and write it, or talk to someone. I actually had a colleague who gave my former resume to his daughter. She'd been working similarly in the industry that she's in now as an OT, but she'd been in it for such a long time in a similar role that a graduate resume didn't really work for her. So she borrowed mine, and lo and behold, she ended up getting a job on that, like the layout and everything. So it's just a little piece of paper, but it's something that you can start now just as you're about to graduate. And also look into graduate programs where you can. It's not always easy, I know, because you've got to apply mid-year or end year, but it's a 2-year, most of them are 2 years, but give them a go. You'll work out quick enough if it's for you or not, but then you can also from that take away and go, yep, okay, I really want to be in this industry, or I don't want to be in this industry. So they're great help as well.
And I think for those of us who aren't familiar with what War and Peace is, you're essentially saying don't make it really big and bulky. It's normally about 5 pages, I think, isn't it?
It's now about 2 to 4.
2 to 4. Okay, so there you go. I was overrunning anyway.
Yeah, so and generally what they want to know is they want to know your work history, like very brief. So it can be where you are year to date. Then they want to know your responsibilities, your day-to-day responsibilities and achievements. So point out your achievements of what you've been able to achieve in that company. And don't think that you've got to put, I worked at McDonald's 10 years ago, but you've had 5 other jobs since then. Drop McDonald's off.
I guess it's what's relevant to your role.
Exactly. And also what you've learned. So up to a certain point, your jobs will have taught you something. So it's showing that. And also if you can write a little bit about yourself, that does help. And also key phrases like that, you might have like a key attributes about yourself. So by that, I mean, you might have time management skills, discipline in work, teamwork, go-getter, just things like that, which can be picked up by managers or HR, and they go, oh, this person seems like they could be the right fit for your team. And they might find a workaround as well. The bit that I struggle the most on is writing the selection criteria for government jobs. I really, really do struggle with that. So some places like you to be short, sharp and sweet, so just straight to the point, and others do like that little bit of ramble on, but they still hold you to 2 pages. So always look at what the jobs are looking for, and make sure that you've got it written into your resume, even if it's just in the responsibilities, because they're what they look at the most.
And I know that you're currently one of our alumni mentors through our industry mentor program. Can you share a bit about what the program is and your involvement in it?
Yeah, so the alumni mentorship is where I can be paired with, or someone can ask for advice. It could be to get into the rail industry or around health and safety in general. And it's just about giving them advice and assistance on what they're doing. So an example of this would be a couple of months ago, I had, and this was during COVID, a mum ring up and she was asking questions about whether or not she should stay in her field or how she could get into Queensland Rail, when she was also setting up her own little business. And I said, why don't you keep exploring that business? It wasn't I was trying to talk her out of what she was doing. She actually had a really good business idea. And so encouraging her to run with that, and she could set up her own timeframes, as her husband was a FIFO worker. So being that she needed to set her own time and parameters, and I said, why don't you run with it? So it can be encouraging people, being that sounding board, but also giving advice where needed, or even helping people understand different things. I've even looked at a couple of people's resumes for them as well, and I'm no expert by any means, but just giving them a few tips and pointers on that side of things as well. So everyone's a little bit different, I think, in what they offer, but it's being there for current students and helping them navigate the university world.
And I don't think we've got any other questions coming through at the moment. If students want to connect up with the program or connect up with you, what's the easiest way to do that?
Probably through CQU. Yes, I am on LinkedIn. I will be 100% honest with you all now. I don't actually use LinkedIn that often.
I think it's industry specific and depends on what you're doing. So
yeah, and look, you can ask safety stuff and things like that. I can help you, but I cannot, without a context, I can't always provide advice either. So that's the other thing to remember too. I'm not an expert in all fields either. So if you're unsure, I can only say, hey, have you spoken to such and such as well? Similar to what I have to do at work now.
Yeah. And so I think the first way to connect up is really going through the Career Hub and connecting up with the mentor program that way. And there's also a lot of other career resources, including the Resume Doctor, which we have available, which I don't think we had when you were going through.
I wasn't there when I was coming through. It would have been handy. I will admit, I actually Googled how to do my resume back then. So me and Google have a lovely relationship.
I'd love to say that, but I was pre-Google, so that would have been helpful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jessie. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us while you're here?
I think just, take your time. Don't rush anything and be true to yourself. And I know that everyone probably thinks, will this ever end? Yes, uni will finish for you, depending on how you do it, but make sure you give yourself those times to go and do things or reward yourself, because you've put in all the effort and the hard work to get where you are now, regardless of who else has been through uni. You've done it yourself, and that's the hardest thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's so easy to compare ourselves to other people and think that we're not doing it as well, but we don't know what their stories are.
Exactly. And I had sorry, Tanya, I had a really cool lecturer when I was at uni. Unfortunately, he has since passed away, and he was a super smart man. He actually used to say, he was trying to show people that you could get all passes and still be brilliant and smart in courses, and then one day you got a credit. and he flipped out at his friend because his friend helped getting that credit. He's like, what'd you do that for? I was trying to show that you could get passes and still be okay and do your job. And he's right. P's equal degree. So a pass will still get you your degree. You don't have to have that high distinction or the credit. It's, I mean, I know when you're a graduate, they ask you what your final score was overall, but it doesn't tell you how good you are or how good you will be at that job. That's one thing to keep in the back of your mind is it's your personality and how you tackle the world will get you through it over your GPA.
Yeah, and I think that's why cover letters and applications are so important, that you're sharing the skills that you have and the experiences that you have, and it's not necessarily about the grade, because I know once you get past that graduate role, most people don't care, because the thing is that you've got in the workplace and you've been able to demonstrate that you can do the work, and that's what they're interested in.
Exactly. And also some people say, oh, but I've been a stay-at-home parent for 10 years. Okay, you've been a stay-at-home parent, but you've done time management, you've budgeted, you've done lots of things as a parent that make you a good person to be in a role for something like that, because you've had to juggle lots of things at once. So don't ever sell yourself short if you've been out of the workplace for a long time or unsure of yourself, put them in. They all account for something. That was something else someone taught me as well, is it doesn't matter if you've been a stay-at-home parent or, you haven't done something for years, but you've been that parent, you've been the budgeter, you've been the shopper, you've been the counselor, you've had to make the food and everything as well, make the dinners, and it's all a skill. You've had to be the listener. So all those things are skills and attributes that will help you in your future career goals as well. So don't ever not put them into something, use them to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we are all enough.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Jessie. It's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you and to hear your insights. Just a reminder to everyone to make sure that you connect through the Career Hub, and we will make sure links are available, and just check out our alumni mentoring program. It is really beneficial. You get to connect with wonderful people like Jessie and really get a different insight into not just how to get into your industry, but also what it's like in there. So I think it's really worth investigating, and I certainly wish I had that available when I completed my studies way back in the far distant past. That's it for our session today, and we hope you'll be able to join our next one in September. Sorry, Bajesh, would you want?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Jessie, for your.
You're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in.